You're gonna need a bigger boat. So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to episode 579 for March 31st, 2024, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody, for this week's show. We hope everyone had a great Easter, if you celebrate Easter.
Absolutely. Time with
Or
the
maybe
family,
you-
time with the Easter baskets, time with the little rabbits and
Exactly.
everything like that. I think more importantly, JD, today, as we're releasing this episode, if it is going to scheduled plan, it's National Don't Believe Anything You Read Day.
Could be that.
Yeah. April Fool's
On the
Day is what I'm
internet,
referring
that's
to.
never a bad thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so however you celebrate, also happy Trans Day of Visibility for those
That too.
that are trans as well. However you celebrate, we hope everyone had a great end of March.
There's a lot to
I will
celebrate.
say, personally, the end of March was fantastic for a couple of reasons. Primarily because, one, my Michigan Wolverines are going to the Frozen Four. So
There you go.
the year of sports being great to me continues, at least on that front, because
You're having a
the end
season,
of
man.
March. The end of March also comes with the end of the worst month the Red Wings have had in a really long time. So I'm glad that's over. We can
Yeah,
move
fair
on
enough.
to April.
Fair
So
enough.
there's that. But I got to spend a lot of time with my son Sam this weekend. I took him to see Kong and Godzilla. We'll have a review of that coming
What is the
soon, but
title of that movie actually?
I don't even know. Godzilla and Kong
Godzilla
Something-
X Kong?
in Hollow Earth. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I've seen the
I don't
movie
know.
and I still don't know. Something about Empire? I don't know.
Oh
I'd
yeah,
have
the
to
word
look it up.
empire is in there somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah. That's all that I know. Godzilla and Kong, the new Empire.
Okay.
The
there
new
you
one.
go.
It's the
There
new
you go.
Empire. Yeah,
The new
not
one,
Empire
not the old
Strikes
one.
Back, but the new one.
Not the old empire, the new
Yeah,
empire,
not to be confused with the old Empire. Yeah,
the actual empire that's worth talking about.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we'll have a review of that coming out soon. But I did get a chance to see that with Sam, and Sam is the biggest MonsterVerse fan that I know. He loves these movies, loves them. I can't even begin to count how many times we have seen Kong Skull Island. He's watched
Wow.
that film dozens of times.
Okay.
The Godzilla versus Kong movie that came out a few years ago. We've seen that certainly quite a few times as well. The 2014 Godzilla, he had a phase with that film.
So he
So, yeah.
likes them all. It sounds like. Does he have
Yes,
a
he does.
favorite, or at least a favorite one right now?
Well, I guess to let the cat out of the bag,
The new
his
one.
favorite is the new one. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But to be fair, I think with Sam, it always tends to be whatever the latest is
What's
that he
top of
saw.
mind, right? What's top of
Exactly.
mind? I was the same way. When I was a kid and I was a huge fan of the Terminator franchise, my favorite at the time was Terminator 3 because it was new. It's what I had just seen. Now, as I get older, no, I don't think that at all. But
Yeah,
that's
sure.
and not to discredit a child's mentality, but it's very much what's top of mind and what's fresh, right?
Yeah.
That tends
Yeah.
to be the thing, and that's kind of adorable.
And that's it with Sam because
Yeah.
he always has that mentality when we're walking out of a movie of that's my new favorite movie.
Mm.
And he
Oh,
will
gosh.
continue to hold on to that. Now, I will say, to be fair to him as well, because last summer I took him to see a bunch of movies. It was really the first year where we went to the cinemas quite a few times, and I
Yeah.
even took him to some press screenings to see Elemental and Indiana Jones and Spider-Man and a few others as well, Transformers, I believe.
Yeah.
In addition to just catching up with some films as they came.
Right.
And at the end of the year, or at the end of the summer, he did have a conversation with me about, okay, what was your favorite films that you saw with me? And
that's sweet.
he had his list that wasn't in order of, what we saw last. So, so he does
Okay.
kind of circle back, and you can see the maturation there a little bit.
I miss those times when I was a kid. So there's something weirdly nostalgic about that. When you see a movie for the first time, it's like that has the room to be your new favorite movie because you're seeing all of these things for the first time. I miss that. I really do.
Yeah. Maybe that'll be the gimmick of the rest of the year for me. Whatever we're reviewing
will
it's
be
gonna
your new
my
favorite movie.
Favorite.
Yeah.
Until we get to our top 10 at the end
If
of the
you
year.
like it, if you end up liking it, it's like, this is my new favorite movie. But if it's something you don't like, then it's your new least favorite movie.
Which I think is ironic because, and we haven't really talked about this a whole lot yet because it's only been 3 months, right? We're still fresh on 2024 and there's so much to see yet.
Sure.
But at this point in the year, I've felt kind of middling on 2024 so far. Like, there's been some good movies to come out, don't get me wrong, but and again, it's only been 3 months, but comparatively to other years, I'm kind of lukewarm on 2024 at this point. Now, obviously, as the year goes, there's going to be so much more to see, and the year will eventually come full circle. And
the year will start officially at some point later.
Yes, exactly. There's going to be many great films to talk about, but I think the irony in what we're talking about here is that outside of Dune, like there's really nothing I'm hugely passionate about at this point in the year.
I think the problem with me is I just haven't seen nearly enough to be dangerous with that conversation yet. And even those that I have seen outside of Dune Part 2, most of them, actually, to be honest, most of them I have not liked at all. Even some of them that have been getting some fairly decent reviews. We'll talk about it a little bit later this week. I think we have it on the docket, but I'll just let the cat out of the bag. The new Roadhouse is one of the worst films I've ever seen. Like, I think it is genuinely that bad. I'll talk about it later when we actually review that, because I think it'll be a fun pairing with the Patrick Swayze film from 1989, which I did see for the first time not too long ago. But this new one with Jake Gyllenhaal, directed by Doug Liman, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan at all.
Yeah. We'll get to it a little bit later, but it is interesting because, and I've talked about this a lot before because of Sam and now Andrew. I have to be a little picky about what I see because I can't see everything anymore. I don't have the time or the energy to see 350, 400 movies in a year anymore.
Yeah. And at times when you have to go and see a movie, sometimes you're watching maybe Sam and it's got to be something that he's actually allowed to see. So then you got to time it with that
that's
too,
part
right?
of it. Yeah, that's certainly part of it as well. And so I am a little stingy when it comes to selection. Now, this time of year, you're a little flexible because a lot of the great movies will either come out during the summer or in the fall season, of course. It's rare that you get like an Ex Machina in March. Like you just don't get those often.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do. Like The Northman, I think, came out in like April.
Oh yeah, that was that a March
like
or
that.
April or something like that, maybe?
And I loved it. That was in my top 10. So
yeah, same here.
You
Great
certainly
movie.
get those. Like Dave Giannini. Will Immaculate be in his top 10 at the end of the year? Probably. Maybe.
Oh, I think
Certainly
it will.
Be in the conversation. He loves that movie.
I know he loves that movie, and that's probably why it'll end up in his top 10. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's also just trying to make a statement for that movie and have it in his top 10 for that reason.
Who knows? Now, for those that listen to our review, you'll know that while the conversation I thought was really thoughtful, and I thought we did a great job of really getting into the weeds on that film and all of its details, but I wasn't a huge fan of it. And while I still have a few items to log on Letterboxd, if you go to my Letterboxd right now, the last 3 reviews I have on there are new releases, and it's the lowest that I've had a row of new releases and a really
and that's
long
a rarity
time, if
for
maybe
you.
ever.
That's a rarity because I think your average is actually a bit higher than my average as far as like what our like average rating is. Yeah. So this is a rarity for you. So I guess this is further proof 2024 not off to a good start.
Not off to a good start. And again, I mean, we're talking about the new Roadhouse and the new Ghostbusters. It's not a hot take to say that, okay,
It's
I'm
low
not very
hanging fruit
high
at this point now. It's,
on those. Now, Immaculate being one of those three, I did not give that a good grade. I don't love that movie. I wish that I did. I wish that I could be on the same wavelength as Dave, but I'm not. There's certainly some elements about it that I really do love, as I talked about. And if I were to rewatch it again, who knows, maybe it will rise for me a little bit. I still think it has some of the best marketing I've seen in a long time.
It led to an interesting conversation. I'm
did.
glad the film exists in its way, whether you like the film or not, because it at least led to a conversation that I feel like we can be proud of, because there was a lot to talk about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, and if you go back a little bit further, I have Love Lies Bleeding in there as well. And the American Society of Magical Negroes, which I did not give a good grade, for that either. So like,
That's sad. Yeah.
Love Lies Bleeding is the highest grade for a new movie that I've seen out of, let's say, the last 7 or 8 entries I have on there. And I have that at 3.5 stars. Again, which I really like. I do really like.
That's a
that
very
film,
good grade. That's the equivalent to a 7 out of 10.
Absolutely. So I love that film. And that's the highest grade I have on there. And for me, that it's just a rarity to have a string of new releases, even at this time of the year, to kind of be that low. Because the films that I'm trying to catch up with in March and April are the Sundance films or the South by films that have come out that people have really talked about. Like those are the films I'm trying to see right now, in addition to watching older films and anything else that comes up. But I just watched Alien as well a few weeks ago for a podcast that I did.
Perfect
I went
movie.
and saw the new Roadhouse film, which I'm sure we'll bring up when we review Roadhouse later on this week. So I saw the 89 version.
Yeah.
And so you're throwing in those films. I watched, this is totally random and we're already in the weeds here, but I watched with Sam. I had never seen the film before. But we watched Waterworld. Have you ever seen the Kevin Costner
Oh, it's been
film,
so long. I haven't seen that since I was maybe like 7 or 8 or something.
Yeah, sure.
If I were to watch it again now, I would probably have to log it as a first-time watch because it has been so long.
Yeah, and I have those from a kid as well. No doubt about it. Not good. I guess I'm kind of in the middle. If I was to rate it on Letterboxd, then I certainly will this week. I'm probably at like 2.5, maybe 3 stars.
Okay.
But probably like 2.5.
Is it kind of one of those where you respect the ambition and the aesthetic prowess of it, but you don't really like it as a movie?
I like the Costner of it. I love some of the relational dynamics.
Okay.
And some of this is also hindsight. I really appreciate the production. I know that it was pretty costly at the time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the figure was exactly.
It was not low, from what I know.
It's there on the screen. They are on the water. It is tangible. It's physical. Nothing about it is CGI. And it just feels like that movie made today, all the water scenes, which is the whole movie, really.
Yeah.
Would be all on a stage somewhere in tanks, and maybe half of the water would be CGI.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
It's just like,
so you kind of have to respect its ambition.
Yeah, there's a little bit of respect, and again, because it came out in the mid 90s, where the technology to just CGI everything just wasn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
So they had to be out on the water, and again, it's a little unfair maybe because of the time in which it was made, but there is something about that tangibility that when compared to how blockbusters are made now, like, man, I do miss that. Like that is effective.
1995, that's when that was.
Yeah.
Okay, I said 93, but yeah, it's 95. Just wanted to correct myself there.
So I did appreciate that, but as a story, it's essentially a Mad Max ripoff, and it is not good. Not good as a Mad Max ripoff.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I do want to watch it again because I remember being fascinated by it as a kid because I've never seen anything like it. And even to this day, if I were to rewatch it, I'll probably think the same thing. I've never really seen anything like it. Can I call it a good movie? Maybe not, but I
Yeah.
can't say I've seen anything at least like it, and maybe not really much of anything since. Like because from what I've heard people what people have described it as, and it sounds like you're saying the same thing. It kind of seems like a time capsule movie.
A little bit of that. Yeah, it
yeah,
is.
but I weirdly respect those. Like I don't have to like those movies, but I'm so glad they exist in their in the form that they are.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
this time of year, it is fun to be able to catch up and have those experiences.
Sure.
Because Sam certainly liked it more than I did, for sure.
I can see
But he's never seen The Road Warrior. I don't even know if he'll see Mad Max Fury Road. We saw the trailer for Furiosa before Godzilla and Kong. And as it began, I told him, hey, I might want to take you to this if possible. I can't, I don't think it would be too harsh unless this is rated R. I don't think it's rated R. I could be mistaken there.
I think it will be. I mean, if it has the same, if it carries the same intensity as Fury Road, I think that's going to be an R-rated film.
Okay, and maybe Fury Road, because in my mind I don't remember it being I don't remember the R-rated material if it was rated R. I could be misremembering. It's certainly been a few years since I've seen it.
If anything, there's an intensity to that film, even if it's not intense in physical or specific ways, but sometimes that unrelenting intensity could be much for a certain age.
Yeah, I'll just say this: I don't he's seen worse in terms of graphic material. I don't think that would bother him. It probably would be the tone and that intensity that you're talking. I mean, we're talking about a kid that thrives on playing Call of Duty. And if you've seen or if you've played those games, they're very vulgar and very violent.
That's arguably worse. That's arguably worse.
No doubt. The imagery and again, the language of that is worse than Mad Max Fury Road. Or likely anything we'll see in Furiosa.
Yeah.
So it certainly could be a tone thing. And I think you are right about that, because he turns to me after the trailer and was like, I don't think I want to see that. So I do think he was intimidated by it. And, because I told him I wanted to show him Mad Max Fury Road before seeing that. But I might wait a few years on that, because he did seem to be.
He might. I don't know him, obviously, so I can't make that call, but I wouldn't be surprised if you need to wait a few years on that, because you'd be surprised of what good and intense editing can do to twist the mind into thinking that I can't stomach this, even if you're not seeing anything physically grotesque or gory or anything like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At any rate,
what do we call this segment?
Down into the weeds here. This is not at all what this show was supposed to be about. I don't even know how we got here, but
I just like to interview you sometimes. I have questions as we come up, and it's
it's fine. It's good. This was fun conversation. I guess all of that to say, I expect 2024 to get much better. My Letterboxd rankings so far this year have really been surprising to me. I've watched a lot of films that I have not graded all that high, and
basically at this point it's Dune Part 2 and everything else, right?
Yeah, at this point. So
yeah.
We're really here to talk about movies where the director and the star are synonymous, where they are one and the same, because coming out this weekend is Monkey Man, starring and directed by Dev Patel. We're very, very excited for that movie. So using that as inspiration, we're going to talk about some of our favorite movies that are in that same formula.
Yeah.
That are written and starred by the same person.
Yeah. Maybe not necessarily written by, but at least directed by the same person.
Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Yeah, directed by. So before we get there, though, we have to start off
trailer talk
in the spirit of last week's show. Yes. Because there are a few trailers that I do want to talk about here. First and foremost, Bad Boys, Ride or Die. And I'm just going to lay it out here, Brennan. I'm going to see this film at least 47 times. I am very excited. This will be the one movie I'm going to break my rules It doesn't matter how busy I am with Sam, what time restrictions I have. I'm going to see this film a gajillion times. Pretty sure about it.
This movie makes me really, really wonder what would have happened if we actually got that Batgirl movie directed by the same duo
I know, seriously.
Dylan Bilal.
Yeah.
Because like we hear the devastating news about Batgirl, the movie that they were directing for DCEU that got completely shelved and basically canceled, and we're never going to get this movie apparently. And not what feels like not too long after we get this trailer for Bad Boys Ride or Die. And it's like how busy were these guys? Like, what were they working on synonymously? I'll just get right to it. I'm not a trailer guy, JD. You know I don't like trailers, but I really dug this one. I really dug the marketing for this movie thus far. And I think the reason why is because it's I really did enjoy Bad Boys for Life. I think that is perhaps the best Bad Boys movie thus far. But what this one here, Ride or Die, seems to be doing is like it's creating this certain polarity between movies where this movie feels like the Bad Boys 2 to For Life's Bad Boys 1. Like it does feel like there's almost more of like an unrelenting energy to this one that Bad Boys for Life didn't maybe have as much of. And I mean that as a compliment. I kind of like how Bad Boys for Life had its own sort of ethos to reintroduce the franchise in a proper way. And really get itself back on its feet. So now it's the time to get a little weird with it. Because like there is an unrelenting energy to this one just based on the trailer alone that I was kind of digging, and I like that they're amping it up a little bit. So it does feel a little Bad Boys 2-ish by comparison to Bad Boys for Life, and I'm kind of looking forward to that.
That is a really great comparison because I also really loved Bad Boys for Life. And while it absolutely carried the same ethos from the first two films, it's really funny. It's thrilling. The performances and the chemistry between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, none of it changed. It was all still very much there. But it was more reflective and poignant than I expected. Yeah. And part of that could certainly be how much older these characters are now and how more grizzled they've been from when they were in their 20s, early 30s, however old they were in those first two movies. Yeah. And I thought that was an impeccable marriage.
I agree.
And it made for a really fun movie that was really great. And then, you watch the trailer for Ride or Die, and it has the insane energy of Bad Boys 2, which it's
way more youthful. Yeah.
Yes.
Or I guess immature might be the right word for it.
Perhaps. Yes. Yeah. And I do love how it is brazenly invoking Michael Bay with some of those shots, like completely ripping off Bad Boys 2 with some of the cinematography, at least as it's indicated
the way it
in the
circulates.
Trailer.
I was definitely
like
thinking about
like the low angle shots and the slow motion of them standing up. Like it is like they are channeling their inner Michael Bay here in ways that I absolutely adore.
But at least it still looks practical. It doesn't look like it almost looks more homage than it does ripoff, right? So while I was thinking about Bad Boys 2 and some of the Michael Bay isms of that movie here, there is still like a proper tangibility that you want in a movie that is essentially a crime thriller and an action film, right? And I respect that it does still have that tangibility and feels grounded in a physical way. Like I feel like there is still a physical weight to the physics of it all, even if it is breaking those laws simultaneously. And that's all you want in an action movie like this.
Absolutely. And I just can't get over everything you're talking about there. I completely agree with the tangibility of it, the filmmaking, and how it feels like something you can touch. Yeah. But I also just can't get over how, and I say this with the most reverence I possibly can. And oftentimes I do feel like a hypocrite here because I feel like I would criticize this with a lot of other films, and maybe it's just my Bad Boys bias, but just how much this is Bad Boys 2 in terms of its tone and energy, for sure. Yeah. And the banter. But from a plotting perspective, it also feels very similar. I mean, there's narcotics that become involved in a major way, which is obviously a big part of Bad Boys 2. There's that scene in Bad Boys 2 where they infiltrate the KKK. This trailer ends with that moment with them with those white nationalist characters and they're wearing their clothes or whatever. Like in every way, the trailer is trying to reference Bad Boys 2 specifically in very specific ways. But it feels like it's coming from a deep place of reverence. Like we love that movie. We love its immaturity, its craziness, and how it's maybe a little bit more over the top from the one that came before. Which is why I think your comparison earlier was so apt, because this seems like it's very much channeling that same vibe.
Yeah.
And I love
same
it.
sense
I've
of
seen this
escalation
trailer,
between the two.
Exactly. I've seen this trailer probably, I don't know, 24 times in the last week. I just can't get enough of it.
and I have to say, I'm with you in the sense that I would probably be more critical of a trailer like this if it were so directly referencing something else that I'm just so reminded of that other thing. But because that other thing in this case is Bad Boys 2, I feel the urge to defend it, because that is not a film that's technically worth defending, but I'm always going to defend it as one of Michael Bay's best movies, because it's arguably Michael Bay's most Michael Bay movie, right? And that's something I just have a deep respect for. So I think I just find myself respecting this trailer for referencing Bad Boys 2 simply because it's referencing Bad Boys 2. This is not something you could really say every day. And I don't know. It, as a movie, even despite that, it looks fun. It looks fun.
It looks so much fun. I cannot wait. I just cannot get enough of it. I mean, that whole moment with the windshield wiper fluid, like that's the kind of dynamic that I love when the dramatic urgency is at its highest. To me, that's what's so defining of Bad Boys 2 with those specific characters. I mean, that scene in Bad Boys 2 when they're on the highway, I could probably quote you that whole sequence. Like I've seen it so many times. It is it's so good.
I think what I like about it too, and again, this is something I did really like about Bad Boys for Life, because it was that more kind of self-reflective film of the franchise, as you were talking about. But in this case with Ride or Die, they actually seem like, no pun intended, they seem like bad boys again, right? Like there's kind of a meanness to it. Whereas with Bad Boys for Life, at times they were kind of like nice boys, right? There was a niceness to it. There was a bit more of a politeness to it by comparison. But that's something I did like about that movie. That movie needed that to help reintroduce this franchise a bit. So now they actually feel like bad boys again. So it's kind of fun to see it go in that direction once again.
Which is spoken to in the trailer, right? Because the captain in that little video is like, I need you to be my bad boys. Yeah. So this trailer, whether that moment is in the actual film or not, we'll see, but it is absolutely
very meta,
trying to very much invoke that idea of like, we're back to being, we're at least going to try to be our 20s bad boys guys.
Yeah, we're back to basics.
Even though we're 45, or however old they are. At any rate, I am very much looking forward to that. The other trailer I wanted to talk about as well, this guy, Yorgos Lanthimos, you may have heard of him.
He's busy.
I think he was recently in the news, maybe nominated for an Oscar or two.
Apparently.
I want to say.
Apparently one of his actors won a major award too or something.
Yeah, something to that effect. Anyway, he's back with a new film called Kinds of Kindness. And there was
say
a
that
trailer,
5 times fast.
a trailer for that as well. What did you think about the trailer for the new Lanthimos?
This trailer gave me absolutely nothing, which means it's a good trailer.
Yeah.
I have no idea what this is about. I mean, it does look very different from other Yorgos Lanthimos films, because Yorgos has made films that have been in varying different time periods and settings and stuff like that. He certainly plays with sense of place a lot, but I feel like this is the first time where he's really playing with a more urban setting, or like an existing urban setting. So it definitely feels kind of different in that regard. The trailer weirdly reminded me of Quentin Tarantino of all people. Like it just kind of weirdly had that kind of energy to it. I don't know where they filmed this, but it did feel kind of LA-like as far as other LA films are concerned by comparison.
Yeah.
So it definitely had a different energy to it, but I have no idea what this movie's about, and I like that.
Yeah.
I hear it's an anthology film. I don't know
Yes.
if that's true or not, which if it is, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I believe that is correct. I think it's been confirmed it is an anthology film.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. But even knowing that little tidbit, the trailer doesn't really tell you that. If anything, it maybe suggests that this could be some type of like interconnected ensemble film, or an anthology film, one of the two, because of how many characters are here. But trailer gave me literally nothing as far as plot is concerned, and that's what I like to see in a movie like this. It just creates a vibe.
Yep.
And that's pretty cool.
And to emphasize that point, this is from Searchlight Pictures, from Searchlight themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Kinds of Kindness is a triptych fable with segments following a man without choice who tries to take control of his life, a policeman who is alarmed that his wife, who was missing at sea, has returned and seems to be a different person, and a woman who is determined to find a specific someone destined to become a prodigious spiritual leader. None of that is in the trailer. Like, you don't
Not at
know
all.
any of that based off of this trailer. You have to read that from Searchlight.
Yeah,
to
it sounds
know what
interesting.
This movie is about.
Kind of wish they didn't have it that specific though, and that's not a knock on the film. That's more a knock on Searchlight than anything else. But either way, it sounds like an interesting movie just based on what they're describing. I got none of that from the trailer. In fact, the way it's described, that doesn't necessarily scream anthology film to me. Like, if anything, that could be like what I said earlier. Almost kind of sounds like it could be like a Robert Altman Shortcuts kind of thing, like multiple stories interconnecting all at once, which could be potentially interesting as well. But it does feel very much like a different kind of Yorgos Lanthimos film, which is interesting.
Yeah. And that's the one takeaway from the trailer that I think most of us have had, is that it does not feel like a Lanthimos trailer. It feels like a Tarantino or a Fincher, maybe a little Sean Baker in there. Is
a little PTA maybe
at this, if I'm looking at this from like the way we talk about coffee and tasting notes, I sensed a little Sean Baker in there. I got a little Sean Baker flavor.
Tangerine.
a little tangerine. I could taste it. It's right there.
There you go.
A little tangerine.
Oh yeah.
Little Florida Project. Since I tweeted about that last night. But
you did. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly feels like more those filmmakers than it does a Lanthimos film. And that does make me very exciting to see him use urban setting in probably a very different way. Even The Lobster was a little bit of that, but it still had that Lanthimos, I don't know what time period this is kind of thing. It
still had a weird like dystopian kind of vibe to it. And I think that's the thing. All of his movies, even if they do take place in present day in some way, there's always some weird like dystopian edge to it. Like Dogtooth had a very like domestic dystopian kind of vibe to it. The Killing of a Sacred Deer is maybe the only one that feels
that's the closest to this.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the closest. But even that one has, I mean, it still has its own Lanthimos like strangeness that makes it feel like it takes place in a completely different world.
Yeah,
at least based on the people that we meet in that movie.
Exactly.
This one will probably still be the same thing, but it definitely seems to be emphasizing the familiar sense of place that we already know, which is different.
It feels more tangible than anything we've seen with him before. Something that, like, I feel like I could see myself in this world, whereas the rest of his films are utterly distant in a way that I love.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong.
I can't recall ever seeing
but
I can't.
They are different worlds.
I can't recall ever really seeing a Yorgos Lanthimos film where a sports car is just racing down a highway or a back road or something like that. Like that just creates a completely different kind of like vibe, right?
It does.
It definitely doesn't feel, Poor Things like.
Nope.
It doesn't quite have that same thing.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the cinematography, the imagery of Poor Things, that clearly comes from some sort of somewhere in the multiverse that's not our universe at all.
Yeah.
that is a very distinctive world for sure. Yeah, everything in this trailer from an imagery perspective, aside from maybe the dog drinking out of the straw, feels like something that you would see walking down your street.
And interestingly, it's a lot of the same people behind the camera that have worked with Yorgos Lanthimos before.
Yeah.
Robbie Ryan coming back as cinematographer, worked on Poor Things and The Favorite. So it's not just Yorgos. It's a lot of different artists behind the camera trying to channel a different vibe. And I like when artists do that. You know, that way they don't get typecast or pigeonholed to a certain aesthetic or a certain thing. And I like that they seem to be challenging even themselves here a bit.
Yeah. And he also brought back the co-screenwriter that he wrote Dogtooth and Alice and the Lobster with.
A person's name who I cannot pronounce.
I was going to say, I don't know how to pronounce this name. You'll have to
We've
forgive
tried
me.
before and we've failed miserably.
Yeah, it's very challenging.
Yeah.
Forgive me. But yeah, when they get together, though, I love their writing. Love their writing.
Me too.
So,
me too.
Yeah, that alone has me excited. This cast is incredible, which I don't think we've named yet, but Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe, Margaret Qualley, Hong Chow, among many others that I'm sure will come and go throughout the film. But yeah, I mean, that's very exciting. And, you know, like that alone would sell me. And this trailer, I think, did more than enough to intrigue me as to how new and refreshing this will be for Lanthimos.
How hilarious it will be after the success of Poor Things, at least as an awards player, that Kinds of Kindness comes out and people are like, yeah, this is easily his best movie.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I feel like that happens often.
Yeah. Well, the thing with Yorgos is that every movie of his has such a strangeness to it, but they all have like their own brand of strangeness that what my favorite filmmakers are ones that there really isn't much of a consensus as far as what their best films are. Like any person that we talk to in our film critic circle, you ask them to rank their picks of Yorgos's films from best to worst, a lot of them are going to be very different. And that's what makes him kind of an exciting filmmaker. Like for me personally, Poor Things I actually think is lesser Yorgos, but a lot of people think it's one of his best. So it's all about perspective there, and everyone responds to his level of strangeness in different ways. So it'll be exciting to see what he does here once again.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I loved Poor Things. Obviously, that was in my top 20 of the year.
Yeah.
I think I had it at like 13, 14, something like that.
Yeah, you had it pretty high.
So I really liked it a lot. I love The Favorite. His work with Tony McNamara, I do really like, but there is something about him working with, again, forgive me, I can't pronounce his name, but
I just call him Philippou or something like that.
My goal is to learn it by the time the film comes out. I'm going to know how to say it correctly.
That's a good goal. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to do the same.
I'm going to remedy that problem. So again, forgive me, but yeah, I'm excited to see them work together again.
Yeah.
And to go back to that level of weirdness.
Yeah,
I think this film is going to be very exciting.
Same here.
All right, let's talk about this new film. It is called Finest Kind from writer-director Brian Helgeland.
Yep.
Who you may know if you've seen films like 42 back in 2013.
Yep.
Or Legend with Tom Hardy. 2 Tom Hardys in 2015.
Hey, let's get even more nostalgic here, right? A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger.
Knight's Tale?
Yeah.
Yes.
Payback with Mel Gibson.
Payback.
That's one I used to like as a kid.
Absolutely.
Or if you look at Brian Helgeland as just a screenwriter purely, movies like Mystic River, L.A. Confidential, worked with Clint Eastwood a few times there. So yeah. So Brian Helgeland is someone that's been around, to say the least.
He's been around. Yeah. Absolutely. Even if you don't recognize the name, you've certainly seen a few of his movies for sure.
Absolutely.
And he has a new film. It is called Finest Kind, and it stars Ben Foster, Toby Wallace, Jenna Ortega, Tommy Lee Jones. That's a pretty good cast there.
How is this movie not a bigger hit?
I know, but it is available right now on demand if you want to go and check that out. We have 5-digit codes though.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You could go and rent it. We encourage you to go and rent it.
Absolutely.
But you could also win a digital code. A little synopsis in case you need a little bit more inspiration. It is about a crew of fishermen who tread dangerous waters when their debts start piling up. Okay.
All right. And
So
we know
there it
Brian
is.
Hugland is really good when it comes to crime thrillers. He has certainly
Yep.
written a few, made a few himself,
Yep.
which means I'm very excited to watch this one if I do say so myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I believe this is like I said, it's available. It'll be on Paramount Plus. And if you want a free digital code, all you got to do is follow us on social media. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Stay tuned. We'll have an announcement this week on how you can win one of these digital codes.
Yep.
And we'll be giving them away. We have 5 of them.
Absolutely.
5 whole digital codes.
Can I play?
Again, no, you cannot play.
I know. Let's be honorable. Our listeners, they take priority.
No, yeah. Again, Ben Foster, Toby Wallace, Jenna Ortega, Tommy Lee Jones.
What a cast.
Sounds like a great crime drama thriller that you need to check out. So
Yeah.
Stay tuned for one of those digital codes, and we thank Finest Kind for their support. All right, Brandon, let's talk about the InSession Film Store.
Toys.
We have some awesome t-shirts that you might want to go and check out.
Yep.
We recently have a couple of new t-shirts on there for those that are into the Oscars. Perhaps you'll be a little annoyed by this, but I still love it.
Hey, stick to your guns, man. Keep pushing the message.
I gotta keep pushing the message because sometimes turning art into sports isn't a good thing. At least I don't think it's a good thing. So we have brand new t-shirts available right now that you can go and check out, and that simply say stop turning art into sports.
Love it.
You can
Love it.
If you're watching on YouTube, I'll of course put it on the screen there for you to see. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, just go to InSessionFilm.com/store, or you can go straight to our TeePublic store, which is who we use for our t-shirts, TeePublic.com/stores/InSessionFilm.
Yep.
And you'll see it there at the top of our store. Stop turning art into sports. There's actually a couple of different styles there because I couldn't decide which one I liked better. So I just threw up both versions on there. And I flipped
they all
the
look great.
colors.
So it's all good.
I thought it turned out great. I cannot wait to get one. It's going to be the next one I purchase. But we also have Dune inspired t-shirts as well. So if you want to go and check that out, if you're a Dune Part 2 fan like I am, like Brendan is, we got Dune inspired shirts there. We got Star Wars inspired. If you want to continue the awards theme, we have the best thing that ever happened to La La Land is that it lost Best Picture to Moonlight.
Oh, it's hilarious.
There's that as well. We got Midnight Special shirts. And one other one I want to throw out here. I have not put it up yet because I'm still trying to figure out the design, if this is something I want to stick to or do I want to update it. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to put up the design so you can see what I have so far.
Yep.
It is an Arrival inspired t-shirt. The Denis Villeneuve film, of course, starring Amy Adams. And it has a picture of Amy Adams from the film with the quote, "Despite knowing the journey and where it leads, I embrace it and I welcome every moment of it," which is obviously such a pivotal line from that movie.
Yeah.
That I love, that we've talked about forever here on the show. So I want to know your thoughts. Do you like it? Do you want me to change it, update it? Would you buy it immediately? Let me know. Because if you do, if you like it as is, I won't change it and I'll throw it up tomorrow. I would like to hear some
and
feedback.
I won't give my opinion because let's get the listeners' ideas on this one.
Yeah, like
I have my thoughts.
I do like it. Foundationally, I think there's, it's good. I kind of wonder if I want to tweak it a little bit. But I'm curious. I'm curious what everyone else thinks. If everyone else likes it as is, look,
please let us know.
No problem keeping it that way. And
Absolutely.
we'll throw it up there.
Yeah.
So let us know. Let us know what you think. Again, that's InSessionFilm.com/store, or simply go straight to TeePublic at TeePublic.com/store. /stores/InSession Film. And we thank you for your support. All right. With all of that said, I think we can finally transition to what we're really here to talk about. Again, with Monkey Man coming out and Dev Patel is inspiration here as he directed Monkey Man. He obviously stars in it. I've heard nothing but great things about it. So I'm very
really
excited
looking forward to it.
dive into it. So we're going to be talking about some other directors who have starred in their own movies, some of our favorites here. And I think we need to get this out of the way because this conversation begins with Charlie Chaplin.
Well, I was going to say, you're starting where I wanted us to start, because it's not just Charlie Chaplin. There are certain filmmakers / actors that are sort of known for doing this, and maybe we need to talk about them first. And of course, Charlie Chaplin is one of the earliest / premier examples of this very thing.
100%. And I don't know how much we need to dive into it here. For those familiar with the show, we've championed Charlie Chaplin forever. We did a whole Chaplin series a few years ago. It was one of the most rewarding exercises we've ever done. Absolutely love him. He's one of my all-time favorite directors. I believe he is for you as well. He
would be in my 4 for my Mount Rushmore of directors. And I know that exercise has gone on. Honestly, I was going to ask if he was the same for you. There are a few others that would be battling that conversation for sure, but Charlie Chaplin would be in my 4.
I think so. Absolutely. We have varying films as far as our favorite of Chaplin, but I think it's fair to say that on the whole, we absolutely adore his entire filmography, and the man can do no wrong. So love Charlie Chaplin, and I at least wanted to either bring him up to begin with or just get it out of the way so we can move on.
I think it's a mix of both. Yeah. I mean, every one of his feature films, even his short films as well, we don't want to discredit those.
Yeah. No,
he more or less started the very first ever cinematic universe, right? He plays the same character in all of these movies.
He does.
And that's the overarching point of them. But yeah, if you look at his feature films in particular, I don't think he's really made a bad product. There are some I like more than others. I think your favorite is Modern Times. My favorite is City Lights. For me.
Yeah,
City Lights is my favorite.
Both of them.
Yeah, I love The Circus. I love The Kid. I love Limelight. I really enjoy The Gold Rush as well. And it's not just Charlie Chaplin, but around this time, you can also cite someone like Buster Keaton doing a lot of the same things.
Buster Keaton,
too.
that came to mind as well.
Yeah.
I haven't seen nearly as many. And admittedly, I don't love him as much as Chaplin.
I mean, I like the sense of danger in his films. Like
for sure.
I'd say if you want to do any kind of comparison, a movie like The Circus from Charlie Chaplin is probably the closest he's come to mimicking something that you'd see a Buster Keaton do, because it is so acrobatic and thrilling in that way. But yeah, Keaton was more about testing the form of what you can capture on film and what you can get away with. And I really respect that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do appreciate that, despite them, I guess, having a similar ethos, their films.
Sure.
Again, I haven't seen all of Keaton's, but it does seem as if their movies are actually quite different from each other.
They are, yeah.
And that is, very exciting. So I did see The General last year, I believe. And that was the first time.
Yeah.
That's one of those I'm kind of mixed on. I didn't love it, but to your point, I think what's incredible about it is the staging and choreography of it, and the fact that a lot of those stunts were performed by him in the moment.
Oh yeah, he could have died many times in that movie.
It's insane, absolutely insane what he put himself through.
Yeah.
And that does make for some evocative imagery. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I just don't think Keaton as a storyteller was nearly as good as Chaplin. That to me is the difference between the two.
Chaplin was more interested in story and narrative and pathos, right? He if anything, he was, and this is a weird comparison to say because this other filmmaker hasn't obviously come out yet at this time, but Chaplin was more Spielbergian, right?
Yeah.
He definitely had more of an interest in what you could do narratively, and I think that's what made his films so timeless and why you can still
Yeah.
watch him today. I've showed many of Chaplin's films to my wife, and many of them she watches now and thinks, "This feels like it could have come out today." Like, that's how she
Yeah.
reacts to them, and I think that's a wonderful
It's
reaction
brilliant.
to it.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, I'm not here to be an anti-Keaton guy. Don't get me wrong. I don't
Mhm.
dislike him as an actor or a filmmaker. I just
Right.
feel that Chaplin was on a different level. That's all.
Yeah.
And could do a little bit more with the form, and
Yeah,
especially
I'm
with
with
the
you.
story.
I'm with you. Yeah,
But
love Chaplin.
Keaton, worthy of a mention here. Absolutely, no doubt about that.
Mhm.
I also feel like, just to get it out of the way, Orson Welles,
Citizen Kane. Yeah.
Citizen Kane. Just got to get that out of the way. Obviously, Citizen Kane is my personal favorite film of all time.
Mhm.
And no, I don't say that ironically. I truly believe it is the best film ever made.
It's a
I know
great
that's
film.
very pretentious film critic thing to say, but I do love it. We've reviewed it here on the show. We've talked about it quite a bit if you want to hear me go into it more, but I think there is a surprising pathos to that film that isn't talked about enough. People talk about the performances and the craft of it, which was decades ahead of its time. And all of that contributes to why I think it's one of the best films of all time. But
Yeah.
I also think it's as profound and as intricate of a thematic experience as it is a dramatic and cinematic one. And for me, that's the difference. And the other thing too with Orson Welles, just kind of generally, I guess, to this whole conversation is, Citizen Kane gets the most, gets talked about the most, but I really like all of his movies though. I
Yeah.
don't know how you feel about his others outside of.
I like them all
Kane,
to
but-
varying degrees. If I had to pick up number 2 at this point, it might be Touch of Evil. I think that might be the one that comes to mind the most.
Yes.
But I do like all of his films to varying degrees, even if I know that some of them had, some troubling productions to say the least, such as The Magnificent
Mhm.
Emersons. And
Which
that's
I
a film I
really
also
like.
still I really like it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that film is really good. Like, I've championed that. I know that film was butchered by the studio, or
Yeah.
at the very least, he ran into some issues with the studios. But the Orson Welles of it all, I think, is it keeps that film intact and still keeps it quite fascinating.
Yeah.
So like I still really like it a lot. Maybe that's just my Wells bias coming through. I don't know, but I think it's good. It's really well shot. Again, he just has an eye for the camera, and I think that it comes through in that film. Same thing with Touch of Evil. It is a really great film with some amazing cinematography in that film as well.
Yeah.
And recently I caught up with or rewatched rather. I had seen it before, but it had been some years. Is F for Fake?
Oh, that's
That
another
film
really good one.
Is so like I forgot how
That's a fascinating
brilliant that movie is. It is
So fascinating.
fascinating. And again, I think what's interesting is while it toys with narrative, what's real and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
The cinematography in that film is arguably the best of all of his movies. And we're talking about a filmmaker that really had an eye for cinema.
Yeah.
And man, the cinematography in F for Fake will absolutely blow you away at times. It's
It will. It
incredible.
will.
And
Yeah.
for a movie that was trying to be experimental, that was this pseudo documentary of sorts, it had every right to just lean into its experimentation and let craft such as cinematography kind of fall by the wayside. And
Yeah.
Orson Welles is like, nope, not on my watch.
Not on my watch,
That's
no.
not how this is gonna
Yeah.
work.
Have
And
you seen all of Orson Welles' films as a director?
I don't think I have seen.
So I'm
I
looking
don't
at
think
his
I've
list
seen The
right now.
Stranger. Yeah, I'm looking at it. I don't think I've seen The Stranger.
I have not
Um,
seen Chimes at Midnight, which I know he also stars in. And I also
Yes.
haven't seen The
I
Trial.
think I've seen Chimes at Midnight.
Okay,
That
okay,
one I think I like. That one I haven't seen nearly as recently though.
gotcha. Yeah, and admittedly, I also haven't seen The Trial, which I know he didn't star in. I know that starred Anthony Perkins, but I've heard some decent things about that one as well. So
Yeah.
I still have a few blind spots, admittedly, when it comes to Orson Welles, the director. But for what I have seen, there's a reason we talk about him in a way as someone that
Yeah.
was way ahead of his time.
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
man knew how to tell a story
Mhm.
and utilized what cinema had to offer
Absolutely.
as a form. So definitely wanted to bring him up. Love Orson Welles.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
So wanted to get those out of the way. Should we just go to some other big hitters here?
Well,
Or
I'd
where do
say
you want to
one
take it
other
next?
well, I'd say one other filmmaker we need to talk about because he is another one of these premier examples, and I'd say he's a premier example because he may have the most films where he has starred in and directed as well, and that's Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, of course.
So I feel like we at least have to acknowledge that name. And Clint Eastwood, I do think, is a hit or miss filmmaker, but when he hits, I think he makes some really incredible films.
Yeah.
Unforgiven, I think, is one of the greatest Best Picture winners of all time. Might still be my favorite film of his. And if we were talking about some of our favorite films in this specific category of movies directed by its star, I think Unforgiven is one I would consider for this conversation just in general. But there are a lot of other films by Clint Eastwood that I also really like that do feature him, such as Million Dollar Baby. I love that movie as
Mhm.
well. I know you really like A Perfect World. That's one of your favorite Clint Eastwood films as well, right? And at
Yes,
least
I
I
really
think
like that one. I don't
yeah,
like.
and that,
I mean, I don't know if it's a favorite, but I liked it. Yeah.
okay, I think you liked it
I'm
more than I
definitely a
did.
defender. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one as well. But even some of his earlier westerns before Unforgiven, such as The Outlaw Josie Wales and High Plains Drifter, he's done this many times. Unforgiven, I think, is the one to really cite for this, though.
I agree. Unforgiven is, well, I was going to say his masterpiece. He might have a few on here. But if I have to
Mhm.
claim one, gun to my head, and I can only pick one, it's Unforgiven.
Yeah, I might have to go that way as well. It's the easy pick, but it might be the right pick.
Yeah. No, it's certainly the right pick.
Yeah,
Although
and
there's, I mean, his 2000s work. I mean,
I often
There's a-
cite the early to mid 2000s as a time when we got spoiled by how good Clint Eastwood was as a director. Like that
Yeah.
stretch of films that he was directing from Mystic River through to, I guess, Gran Torino, if you really want to stretch out as far as possible. It kind of
Mhm.
reminded me of that run of Pixar films when you were just getting spoiled with masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely think the majority of those films in that run of Clint Eastwood's directorial efforts are at the very least near masterpieces. I love Million Dollar
Yeah.
Baby. I love Mystic River. Letters from Iwo Jima might be his best work as a director from a craftsmanship standpoint.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't love Gran Torino, but I love what it means for the legacy of Clint Eastwood, the artist. I
Mhm.
love how it exists in that way. So like there was just so much happening there that made him such a prominent figure in Hollywood.
I agree. And obviously, given the context of this conversation, not all of these films are applicable. But
Mhm.
if we're simply talking about him as a director, yeah, that run is just quite fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
Flags of Our Fathers is more criticized, but I think is maybe a little underrated.
I
I
like it.
do really like it. I still think it's good. It might not be quite as great as Letters from Iwo Jima, but I still think it's
Mhm.
good and worthy of being mentioned in that run with
Yeah.
Million Dollar Baby and Mystic River.
Mhm.
Gran Torino, I also like, despite its flaws. It has noticeable blemishes, but I still like it overall.
Yeah.
It's really not until he gets to the 2010s where it's like, where did that guy go?
Yeah.
Like, I know,
Yeah.
like Sully's
Yeah.
fine. Sully's fine. American Sniper has its moments, I guess, but
Mhm. Mhm.
certainly a lot more misses in the last 14 years or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that was a hell of a run in the 2000s.
It was.
No
It
doubt
was.
about it.
Yeah. But he's done a lot of great films that he does star in, like we mentioned, not just Unforgiven and some of those other westerns. I'm actually a
Mhm.
big fan of The Bridges of Madison County, the film he did with Meryl Streep. I think that's a really
Mhm.
tender romance, and I really like that one quite a bit as well.
There you go. Bridges of Madison County also being mentioned here. Good movie though.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
is a
I
good
really
movie.
like it. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we have to mention Clint Eastwood. That might come to a lot of people's minds first when we're talking about this specific thing.
Yeah.
For me, it was Chaplin. Chaplin was the first one that came
Same
to
here.
mind,
Yeah.
and Orson Welles simultaneously. Those two for sure. But Clint Eastwood is certainly up there. Where should we go next? Should we talk about Gene Kelly, who co-directed some of
Singing
his
in the Rain?
movies? A little
Yeah,
Singing in the Rain. Yeah.
Yeah, we could talk about Gene. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Little Singing in the Rain.
I love Singing in the Rain. That's a very fun
Yeah.
movie. You like it a lot more than I do still.
It's one of my very favorite musicals. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not that high for me, but that is
Well,
like
you're
you want to
wrong.
talk about endlessly rewatchable movies. That's certainly up there though.
That's certainly up there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and to be fair, because I know he co-directed that and a few others. I admittedly don't know how much of his involvement as a director he was as a co-director. I don't know, but certainly worth mentioning at the very least.
Yeah, I do think about that. Yeah, because you look at Singing in the Rain specifically, his co-directing job with Stanley Donen, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And Stanley Donen has had a pretty well-regarded career as well, just directing movies on his own, such as, I'm looking here, such as Charade, for instance, the film with Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. There's also Funny Face, once again, with Audrey Hepburn. So you're right. It's kind of hard to, I guess, separate the Gene Kelly from it all. And like how much of his involvement as a director really qualifies for this conversation. But by credit alone, it does. So it is worth mentioning.
It's worth mentioning. He's there. Yeah. He directed a few of his films to some degree. Whatever that means, that I don't know. But it's certainly worth mentioning. Because, I mean, I love him as a performer. Yeah. And Singing in the Rain especially is one of those endlessly rewatchable, but truly great musical. I will absolutely defend it as one of the best musicals of all time.
For sure.
Not that that's a hot take or anything, but I think it is on a pedestal.
It's a really good movie.
I think it's should
really
be
good
on a
movie.
pedestal.
It's a really good movie.
All right, where to next?
Let's see. If I feel like this conversation has been more about directors as opposed to the films themselves. But like there are a lot of directors that have done this many times, right? Mm-hmm. That they're kind of known for it. Someone else, Ben Affleck. You know, some of the films that he has directed, he has also starred in. Argo, Air, most recently, The Town, I think are all effective films. I don't know if either of those would make my ranking as the best movies that fall into this specific category, but he is someone that has done this quite a bit. You posted this question on Twitter, JD, asking people what are their favorite films that are directed by its star. Mm-hmm. And a film that I did see referenced quite a bit that we should at least acknowledge is Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. Spike Lee is also someone that was featured at least in supporting roles in a lot of his films as well, especially his earlier films. But Do the Right Thing is perhaps his masterpiece and probably the best one to talk about here as far as this particular topic is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, as far as films go, like individual films, that one certainly comes to mind.
Yeah.
I guess I mostly thought about this through the lens of the filmmaker itself because a lot of these guys star in many, if not all of their movies, such as Chaplin, or Orson Welles is in quite a few of his. Not all of them, but certainly quite a few. And Clint Eastwood, we just talked about, is in a huge chunk of his movies. Ben Affleck is in
a lot of because a lot of these people started out as actors and then they became directors.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we can talk about Bradley Cooper as a recent one.
Stars Born,
starred in his movies.
Yeah.
Like controversy and all. People really hated him for Maestro. I still don't get the hate, but
I wouldn't go that far. I didn't like the movie that much, but I wouldn't go that far.
I wouldn't go that far either. Yeah. Kenneth Branagh, same thing. Woody Allen, Warren Beatty. Like we can go through the list here, and we can it just comes with the territory, I guess. When you're an actor
That's
and you
fair.
act in a lot of movies and then you start directing, you're going to direct yourself, not exclusively, but a lot of the time they do. And so I didn't really look at the films and did any sort of ranking. I just really looked at a bunch of these filmmakers as these are the filmmakers to talk about when it comes to this topic.
Yeah.
And yeah, Spike Lee is certainly there. Now that diminished quite quickly. Like he's not prominent on this list for me through that prism because
He hasn't done it many times.
he disappeared from being in front of the camera a long time ago.
Yeah.
But Do the Right Thing, he is in that movie. So if we're just looking at individual films, then yeah, Do the Right Thing is there, and it's one of the best films of all time. I think I do have it in my top 20 of all time.
I think you do.
I
think
love
you-
that
I remember
film.
you
I
put
think it's
that,
great.
yeah. It's really
Obviously
good.
very important. And he's in front of the camera. But unlike many of these other performers, him in front of the camera is such a small caveat to the movie and such a small footnote in the conversation of what makes Do the Right Thing great, because it's really his filmmaking. It's the writing that makes that movie what it is, not
Certainly found
Spike
his
Lee, the
niche with that
actor.
movie, as opposed to some of his other early films where he was also co-starring a lot of them. You're right, definitely took more of a backseat to focus on, his craft behind the camera. And I think he's a fine enough actor on screen. I think he's a compelling presence whenever he is on screen, but he does a lot of really creative things behind the camera, and I'm glad he chose to focus on that.
Yeah, I agree. Like he's certainly done it a little bit more than, let's say, a Martin Scorsese, who has cameoed once or twice, but no one thinks of him as being an on-camera.
No,
personality.
cameos don't really count. Yeah, as much as I might
no.
want to reference his cameo in Taxi Driver, that's
Exactly.
that's a stretch. That's a stretch for this conversation.
Honestly, it's what he does with Killers of the Flower Moon that's more prominent in that regard.
Oh yeah,
Not that he's really acting there. It's this meta component that's just fascinating. He's in front of the camera, obviously, there at the end of that movie, but we think of Scorsese as being behind the camera. That's how I think of Spike Lee as well. Even though
same here.
he's in Do the Right Thing, when that film is brought up, like his performance is the last thing on my mind. You know what I mean?
Same.
So, but yes, technically qualifies here, and it's arguably one of the very best films that we'll mention tonight. There's no doubt about it.
I agree with
but
that.
to Ben Affleck, though, I really like his filmography as a director for the most part. I wasn't fully in love with Air. I thought Air was a nice comeback, I guess, of sorts. And it's a little disheartening to think about the trajectory of his career as a filmmaker, because it seemed like it was rising to this level where he could, I don't know, be the next Clint Eastwood, I guess, or the next whatever name you want to throw out there, as far as, one of the best directors that we've seen that came from the field of acting. And that did stall out for a while. And a lot of it came as a result of his involvement with the DCEU. And I'm not here to bash the DCEU. That's not what this assignment is for.
It's not about the DCEU. If anything, it's more about the scheduling and the timing of it all.
Yeah, well, and obviously he wanted to direct a Batman movie. Like he was on deck to direct a solo Batman movie that fell through for whatever reason. I don't even know if it's ever come out to light
as to why,
what it was. Yeah,
I don't know.
I'd be curious.
Yeah,
there's a documentary to be made on that, and I want to
be a fly on the wall for that conversation. Yeah. But then I know around that same time he had directed the that period crime caper Live by Night, which I know wasn't very well received, and maybe that had something to do with it as well. Yeah, that was not very good.
Well, let me look at it here. So part of it is it had a budget of well, there's two numbers here. I'm not sure which one it is. I guess so. It had a
the internet doesn't even know.
The internet doesn't even know. Okay, so a budget of 90 million. Let's just say 90 million.
Okay.
The box office according to this that I'm looking at anyway, is 22.7. So that's not great. And also, it was just absolutely destroyed by critics.
It was
Absolutely murdered. And it came out at a weird time. Like, it was like the end of December in 2015 or 2016 with very little marketing and discussion around this film, which I always thought was strange because this was the next directorial effort of his following an Oscar for Best Picture.
Yeah.
So this is his next movie following Argo, and not a word about this movie. It just drops in theaters in December of 2015.
I guess people behind the scenes knew more about it than we did. And after seeing the final product, maybe that's what they were revealing or holding close to the chest for a little while.
And maybe that's what it is. Maybe there was some production hell with it. I don't really know. I'd have to go back.
I wouldn't be surprised. It is such a choppy movie that feels like it was butchered in some way, or at least it felt like a director whose wings were clipped not to make the movie he wanted to make.
Yeah, it could be one of those things too where they rushed the production maybe because of the Oscar win. I don't know. I don't know the story there. I'd have to go and look at it. But I do agree that there was probably some sort of either rush production or some sort of studio involvement because the editing is a nightmare.
It's atrocious. Yeah, which is a shame because like say what you will about Argo being a Best Picture winner and whether it's one of the better Best Picture winners of the past decade. I think it's an awesome movie. I think it's a good thriller, a really good thriller. And might be my favorite Ben Affleck directed film of the 5 films he has directed thus far. I don't really care what like how that fits into the conversation, but it's unfortunate that following a really effective film like that, it just goes in the complete opposite direction one film later. And I don't think he deserved that.
No, I don't think he did either. And then obviously because of his involvement in the DCEU, he didn't really get back into the director's chair for quite some time after that.
Yeah.
But, you know, say what you will about him and his involvement with the DCEU. That's just one little bit of it. Obviously, there was his performance, his role in The Accountant, which I thought was actually kind of fun. Gone Girl, obviously, was a huge hit for him at that time, around that time.
Sure.
What else was he in? That film in 2020, the basketball movie.
Oh, The Way Back.
The Way Back. That one, you know, so that was like a good welcoming to him as performatively, like, because people were like Oscar worthy, especially during COVID, maybe. Like, there was that conversation.
Wasn't that one also channeling his own personal demons around alcohol?
That too, yes.
So yeah, there was a lot of that happening behind the scenes as well, for sure.
And that could also speak to some of the problems of Live by Night as well.
Maybe, yeah.
Again, I don't know the story there.
Speculate.
I don't know. I don't want to infer anything, but that could be part of why that film was what it was.
Yeah.
At any rate, yes, The Way Back, him kind of channeling those demons and artistically, you know, being cathartic about it, I thought was really great in that film. And his performance was fantastic.
I like his performance in that. Yeah, pretty good movie.
Yeah, pretty good movie.
Yeah. But yeah, Ben Affleck overall, pretty good director.
Yeah, really like him as a director. But I also just want to know, like, because during that time, he also did The Last Duel, which I thought was great. And worth noting, him and Matt Damon as writers, they should have been nominated for a screenplay for that movie. They should have. They should have been nominated. They weren't, and they were robbed. I want to throw that out there. So, like,
they went full Boston in a period movie like that. That should not be allowed, and it's amazing.
Incredible. His performance, wow. Yeah, that was quite unreal. So, like, he's done some good work despite being in either director's jail, or it could just be a bunch of unfortunate circumstances that kind of accounted. Because Air comes out last year, and you know, that's his next directorial effort since Live by Night, right?
Yeah. That was.
That's nearly a 10-year gap, almost 8-year gap, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, so like Air was perhaps a safe movie. It wasn't necessarily trying to be controversial or provocative, but for a
He also didn't
film
write it
about-
too.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but just, him back in the director's chair, making a movie that it was more than satisfying.
Yeah.
And obviously fits the bill here because he is on camera a little bit anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
In a fun little memorable role, those sunglasses, which I have. The Amazon sent me those sunglasses.
Of course they did.
Which was a lot of fun. So thank you for that.
That's cute. That's cute.
But yeah, no, I guess that's like, it's just an interesting story, Ben Affleck as a director.
I agree.
Because his early directorial efforts, I really liked quite a bit. Gone Baby Gone. I can't remember exactly where I had that ranked for me, but it was one of my favorite films of its year. If not top 10, it was just outside of that.
It was certainly
The
close to top
Town
20
is
for
awesome.
me. Yeah.
So I mean, he has showed great promise as a filmmaker. I hope that, whatever that trajectory was from 2007 to 2012, hopefully we can get back to that.
I think we will. I think we will. Air was a big enough hit that I think we can trust him again.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so that's enough Affleck talk. Let's talk about Bradley Cooper and why people hate him. I don't know. I don't know why people hate Bradley Cooper.
I like Bradley Cooper. He's a local Philly boy. I have to like him. And I've always liked his presence on screen, but say what you will about Maestro, I didn't love the movie, and I honestly think Bradley Cooper, the director, is not the problem. I don't love his performance in it. I think that's really the thing I have a little bit of, I'm not sure about yet, but I think I like what he's trying to do as a director that's pretty ambitious, but you look back at something like A Star is Born, that showed signs of a great actor/director. That is a really, really sincere and beautiful performance and directing job from him. And I really love what he was doing there.
No, I completely agree. I don't understand the hate either. I think we all know where this is born out of. We know. Do I even need to say it?
Don't get on your soapbox again, Grady. Don't do it. We'll be here for another 40 minutes.
We know where this comes from, right? We've talked about this forever. I don't need to get on the box, but that's what it comes back to.
Yeah.
There were other nominees that people wanted to win more.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, to champion my champion, I have to talk about other nominees. I got to talk about rivals.
Yep.
And you know who else does that, Brendan? You know what other fandoms do that kind of behavior?
I'd say those that throw balls around.
I'm just saying. At any rate, the hate was completely undeserved. And I agree. Maestro, as a film, should not have been nominated for Best Picture, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Actor, nope.
No.
I love Carey Mulligan. Would I have nominated someone else over her? I would have, but she is really great. So I don't have a problem with that nomination. Honestly, I don't know where you fit him in, but if Bradley Cooper was going to be nominated, I actually preferred him as, in Best Director over Actor, which we've talked about here.
Same.
So, Maestro is fine. I don't have any ill will toward it. I didn't hate the film by any means. I liked it. I just didn't love it. I wouldn't say that it's awards worthy. A Star is Born, maybe I'm a little bit of the same thing with A Star is Born, but I really liked that film a lot.
Yeah.
I probably prefer that to Maestro. But the one thing to me is that both films demonstrate that I think he is a great director, a very promising director.
I agree.
And with the right material, or perhaps a more fine-tuned screenplay, I think he could make something great.
I agree.
And there's certainly there's tons of potential. I want to see way more films from him as a filmmaker. So
I do too. And here's what I do love about him already is that when you watch A Star is Born and Maestro back to back, they do feel like they come from the same directorial mind. And I love that already so early on, he has his own vibe that he is creating. Like his movies move in a very particular way. They're edited in a way that's that feel like their own thing. They're not edited
Mhm.
like a lot of other movies are.
Mhm.
And I at least like that he's developing his own personality so early on, and he's committing to it. I mean, he
I
committed
agree.
to it with Maestro, and sometimes
Mhm.
that movie worked for it. Sometimes that movie didn't work because of it. But I like that he's at least established his own personality and he's sticking with it,
I agree.
and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. There's an ambition there that I
Yeah,
really like. Like
yeah,
the filmmaking flourishes. I can pick out flourishes in both of his movies that as a director or someone with an eye for visuals and cinema, I'm like, that's it. That's
yeah,
the stuff I love. That's
yeah,
what the movies were made for. He's really great at honing his directorial skills in that stuff.
yeah.
In Maestro, I think it might have like his enthusiasm, I think, really comes through as a filmmaker that maybe it gets a little lost in the performance.
He got overly
But
excited for that movie.
yes,
He wasn't able to rein it back a little bit and be a little bit more controlled with it.
yeah, absolutely. And I think
Weirdly, like when I watch both Maestro and A Star Is Born, if I watched those movies back to back without knowing when they came out, I would have assumed Maestro was the directorial debut because it actually
sure,
feels like it has
yeah,
more of the directorial debut problems we tend to associate with
it
debuts.
does, yeah. And I do kind of wonder if one, it's the material, it's the man that
hmm
he's trying to honor while getting the mannerisms, the voice right, that
hmm
he was so focused on mimicking Leonard
Yeah.
Bernstein that the emotional performance perhaps lacked in nuance there.
hmm
Because we all heard him talk about how he was working on the voice for years, called Carrie
Yeah.
Mulligan 2 years before they started shooting this, and talked as
hmm
Leonard Bernstein the whole time they were on the phone, and she was weirded out by the whole thing, but she said yes to doing the movie. Like, he had been working on it and trying to hone that and perfect it, that he got
Yeah.
caught up in the mechanics of getting
Yeah.
the character right
Yeah.
aesthetically, that
Yeah.
perhaps underneath it lacked a little bit. I don't know. In addition to all the filmmaking stuff,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just kind of
I think it's a
theorizing
fair
here, but
hypothesis to make, though. It
yeah,
does feel like that's a reason to criticize the movie because it does feel like it gets a little lost
but that's how it
because of
feels.
that.
It's a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
of how it feels. I agree.
It
A Star
does.
Is
I'm with you.
Born absolutely feels a little bit sharper
It's way more
and
controlled. Yeah.
way more controlled. Yeah, I completely agree.
Mm,
But as
mhm.
I said, I'm more than ready to see what he has next as a filmmaker.
Same here.
I'll be
Same
there
here.
day one.
Yeah. I will be. I will be.
Here's another name I want to bring up. And admittedly, haven't seen all of his movies, but there's one movie, and this is a little bit of the Spike Lee thing, although as we talked about with Spike Lee, like his time in front of the camera is certainly limited.
Sure.
Dennis Hopper, on the other hand, an Easy Rider, a little bit of a different story, but wanted to
Mhm.
bring that up because that is an astounding film. Great movie,
Love that movie.
one of the best of its era.
Oh, one of the premier examples of the American New Wave.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
good. So good.
So yeah, I wanted to bring that up because obviously he gives a really great performance in that
hmm
film. The direction is fantastic. I
Yeah.
haven't seen all. Have you? What all of films of his have you seen,
I have to look at his
or is that
list
the only
to.
one?
That might be the only one. Let me double check his filmography. But I know with regard to Easy Rider, we gave that film a review quite a few years ago, I
It was
think.
during the pandemic, I think,
It
or
may
maybe
have
right
been.
beforehand. Was that
Well, I think it was
2019?
right beforehand because that movie came out was that 69? I think it was when that came out.
Yes.
Which
Oh, so
means
it
it
probably
was
had an
I think
anniversary, excuse me, in 2019.
I think we reviewed that in 2019 for its 50th. And I know we reviewed that with our now editor, Dave Giannini. So we had a
Yeah.
great conversation about that, talking about how it meant for the American New Wave and everything.
Yeah.
But with regard to Dennis Hopper, the director, yeah, I can say that I have only seen Easy Rider. Looking at his list here,
Yeah.
so sadly, I have a lot of blind spots, and it looks like he's actually. I mean, Dennis Hopper was such a prominent actor simultaneously. So it's not too surprising that he doesn't have that many films under his belt.
Mhm.
Like for instance, a movie like the last movie and then Out of the Blue, there's a 9-year gap between them.
Yeah.
So he definitely had a balance there. But yeah, haven't seen all of his movies, sadly. But I do love Easy Rider.
I'm with you. I haven't seen all of them either. And certainly none of them have the cultural impact like Easy Rider did. But that's why I at least wanted to mention it, because it's such a pivotal movie of that era. Really great. And obviously fits the bill here for this conversation. So
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at my list here, trying to think of a few other obvious examples. If we go back to the 90s, I don't necessarily think Kevin Costner is the best example of this with a movie like Dances with Wolves, but he is kind of top of mind because he has a new movie coming out this year, and it's a two-parter.
Yes, he
that
does.
he's also in, and it actually looks like a pretty, like it looks old-fashioned in a way that I'm kind of looking forward to. I can't speak to the cultural, I guess, accuracy of it. I know that has been subject to some controversy already, but he is someone that makes very old-fashioned movies that feel like they come from a different time.
Yeah.
And I like that he is one of those few filmmakers that are committing to real landscapes, huge locations, like an epic classic Hollywood feel like they could have taken place in the 1950s or 1960s. It almost feels John Ford like in a way.
Sure.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next. But Kevin Costner is another example, I guess, as well.
Yeah, no, that was a guy that I had on my list as well. And it really does come to top of mind with Horizon, on the horizon, if you will, coming out.
Yeah, on the horizon.
Fairly soon. And I am really looking forward to that as well. He hasn't, he's not the most prolific of filmmakers, but certainly, worth mentioning here. I mean, and again, say what you will about Dances with Wolves, but that was a very successful movie.
It was. Yeah.
So, and that, was that his first directorial effort?
I think that was his first directorial first directorial effort, and then follows that
what
with
a way
Postman.
to begin your directorial.
Yeah, what a way to begin. And then you follow that with The Postman, and what a way to crash and burn, as many people would say.
And that was what, 7 years later. It's crazy to have Dances with Wolves comes out, and how many awards did it win? A bajillion. The film was nominated for 12 and won 7, including Best Picture, obviously, and Best Director. And you would think that would give you a blank check to direct whatever you want to do next. And no, it takes him 7 years to do the next one. I know he produced a few in between, but...
Well, the 7 years in between Dances with Wolves and I guess, it was The Postman that he directed afterwards. That was a very ambitious project. And
maybe that's it.
And we'll also think of it this way: as an actor, he was also in Waterworld. You mentioned that earlier in this.
Yeah, I did. He
was.
He acted in between for sure.
He did. Yeah. So he was a busy man. He was a very busy man, not just.
Well, and he was a big star at that time.
He was. Yeah.
So I totally get it. Trust me, I'm not myopic to that. I do understand. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I kind of like that movie. JFK is extremely, let's say, controversial, but man, I think that's a great movie, though.
That's a very effective movie. That's a very effective movie.
Conspiracy theory driven.
Might be Oliver Stone's best.
It's so good, so good. Again, say what you will about The Bodyguard, but that had some cultural impact.
The song especially. Yeah.
The song especially. Yeah. Absolutely. Waterworld, again, say what you will about it. But he's, that was a big-ish movie. Yeah. And then there's The Postman, which, as you noted, might not have
was
been quite as successful. I totally get it. Like, as an actor, people want him in their movies. So
yeah.
What do you think about Open Range, though?
I haven't seen it in so long. I need to rewatch that one, but I remember liking it at the time because I think I only saw.
That's how I feel. I like it. I haven't seen it in a while.
I think I've only ever seen it that time that it came out in 2003, and I know we did a 2003 retrospective some years ago, and I didn't rewatch that one in preparation for it, admittedly.
I did not either.
But I've seen it that once, and I thought it was actually I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Trying to think who else. Yeah, who else can we talk about? Yeah. But anyway,
Well,
I'm
okay.
looking at my list here. Yeah, I don't know if you want to change the subject a little bit because I've got a few here that I can also mention, even just directors that are really well known for directing and starring in their own films. I feel like we're not quite talking about the quote unquote greats as much anymore. But someone I have a soft spot for, admittedly, is Sylvester Stallone.
Stallone. Yeah, that's another big name on this list. Yeah.
In particular, the Rocky sequels, because he didn't direct Rocky 1. That was directed by John G. Avildsen, I believe it was. But Rockies 2, 3, 4, and Balboa, those 4 in particular, they're part of the legacy. And I've often said I think Rocky 3 especially is one of the best Rocky movies. I love that movie. I think that movie's great. So Stallone's another example that we can certainly cite here for sure.
Yep. He's directed a handful of movies for sure, especially the Rocky movies.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoy the Rocky sequels for what they are. Some of them are certainly kind of goofy, but that's the charm of the Rocky sequels.
Yep.
But he also did Rocky Balboa in 2006, and that was a little bit more honed in of an experience, and I love the direction and the tone of that movie. So
same.
I mean, and then he also does the Expendables. So there's that side of him.
He did one of the Rambo movies as well too. I think he did Rambo 4.
Yeah, was that the 2008 one?
Yeah, I think he directed that one as well.
Yeah. So he's certainly, he's got both sides of him. That's what I love about Stallone. Admittedly, I haven't seen all of the Rambo movies.
No, I've seen the first 3. So I haven't seen Rambo 4 or even whatever the 5th one is called. That first one though, First Blood, I think is a very effective film. I actually think
the first
you'd
one's
enjoy
great.
that one.
No, I agree.
The
The first one's
great.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do believe he helped have a hand in the writing in some of the other ones, but
he may have. Yeah.
Anyway, Stallone,
another
I'd
good one.
probably prefer him in front of the camera than behind the camera, but you can't have this conversation and not mention him.
Have you taken the chance at watching the new director's cut of Rocky 4?
No.
Yeah, it's called Rocky 4, Rocky versus Drago. I don't know if I would say it's quote unquote good. Like quality wise, I might like it just as much as the original Rocky 4. It's just absolutely insane how he was able to re-edit that film and turn it into a completely different tonal experience.
Oh wow. Okay.
Because Rocky 4 is sort of notorious for being like, it's basically an 80s music video of a movie, right?
Yeah,
it's Rocky MTV is what that movie is.
Yeah.
And he was able, like there's not much new footage in Rocky versus Drago, that director's cut. It's maybe like 10% new footage, but it's re-edited in a way that makes it feel more like a Creed film.
Now that does pique my interest for sure.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what you think about that. Like I said, I don't think it's necessarily a better movie. I love that it exists as this sort of editing experiment and what he was able to do differently with it.
Interesting. All right. Yeah, that's one I'll have to check out.
Yeah.
Especially now that we're early on in the year, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, there you go. You got the time, right?
I got the time. I have certainly a little bit more time for sure. Okay, so moving away from him, we don't need to spend too much time here because obviously we're talking about a controversial figure, but a name that did come to mind for me was Woody Allen.
Yeah.
And look, Woody Allen, terrible human being, absolutely terrible. I do think some of his movies are quite good though.
Same.
And so I guess I'll just leave it at that. We don't have to really expand on it too much, but wanted to at least bring him up here because I do think, again, some of his movies are quite
He's another prominent example for sure. Yeah.
Yes. Warren Beatty came to mind. I think I briefly mentioned him earlier. Have you seen
Mhm.
Reds? Are you a Reds
It's been a
fan?
while. Yeah, I've seen Reds. I don't love it. I like it.
Yeah.
I don't love it though.
That's how I am as well. Long movie, good
Yeah.
movie. I don't know if it fully comes together for me though.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that one.
Okay. Anything else on your list?
Let's see. I did have here, John Favreau being someone that is also both actor and director.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't love Chef, but that is probably the most, I guess, obvious example of this particular category.
Yeah.
That it is an actor slash director's effort because in many ways it is a movie about him. Like it's not a documentary, but it might as well be.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
and I think that's what makes it so good in that regard. So Chef is one I thought about. Braveheart, another one that's pretty popular in that regard. Mel Gibson.
Oh yeah, Mel Gibson, Braveheart for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You probably could have brought that up earlier. And
Yeah.
again, I don't love Braveheart. I think it's
I'm with you.
good for what it is, but it's hard to deny because of the cultural impact it had when it came out. So.
Yeah, it absolutely. As far as Mel Gibson, the director, I mean, my favorite film that he's directed is actually Apocalypto.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I'm not sure which one of his I like the most, to be honest. I'd have to think through that. I don't know.
Yeah. It'd be an interesting exercise. But anyway, Braveheart, definitely one that
Braveheart,
qualifies
though,
for this list.
Well, and okay, so while I contemplate that,
Mhm.
I will also mention, and this is a little bit of a one-off as well,
Mhm.
as we somewhat talked about earlier with Dennis Hopper, but Zach Braff in Garden State.
Okay.
I really
Zach
liked.
Braff.
I thought was really great. So he hasn't done a lot behind the camera, at least in the film world, and I still think that film was really really good.
Yeah.
As a one-off, him in front and behind the camera.
There are a couple here that almost qualify as one-offs. I guess A Quiet Place, John Krasinski.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, he is in A Quiet Place Part 2, but he doesn't star in it. But he does star in A Quiet Place Part 1. So that one, I guess, qualifies. One of my favorite examples is the late, great Bill Paxton, Frailty. I don't know if you've ever seen that horror thriller, Frailty.
Yeah, it's been a while, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
pretty effective film. So I wanted to at
Yeah, I
least
know
cite
you've
that one
talked
as
about
well.
that one before
Yeah, I think it's pretty good.
as one that you've liked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so circling it back to Mel Gibson, because I'm looking at this list and I don't know. Like, I want to say Braveheart, but I don't know. Apocalypto probably is the answer. I do like The Passion of the Christ, though. I do think that's a very
Yeah, I do.
effective film for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Appropriate, I guess, to at the time we're recording this as well.
Happy Easter indeed, everybody.
Happy Easter.
Although
Again,
I will say, if I am going to watch a Jesus-centric movie on Easter, it's not going to be The Passion of the Christ.
yeah, that's fair.
It'll probably be something like Jesus of Nazareth, or maybe even Ben-Hur, of all things.
Yeah.
Maybe the Ten Commandments.
Silence, because
oof.
like silence is, not to get too personal, I guess, but it feels very in line with my journey regarding faith.
Okay.
That it's hard for me to separate my subjective feelings with that film at times.
Yeah.
And it's such a masterfully made movie. It's great.
Yeah.
So
Now we all
silence
know
might be
our
it for me.
we all know our good friend and editor Dave Giannini would say that his Easter movie is immaculate.
Seriously. Oh my gosh. The marketing for Immaculate is just immaculate. Once
Once again, happy Easter indeed.
Yeah. At any rate, Mel Gibson, another one of those not great, but not a great human being, but at least worth a mention here.
Pretty
in this
effective
conversation,
filmmaker.
for sure.
Yeah.
Anything Ben Stiller? I got some Ben Stiller tweets when I put that out. I don't know how you
Yeah.
feel about him
I don't love
as a
him.
filmmaker.
My
don't
favorite films of his as a director are the ones that he's not even in, which I guess are his first two, being The Cable Guy and Reality Bites, the film with Ethan Hawke and Winona Ryder. Those are the two of his I really do like. Tropic Thunder, I think, is fun, but it doesn't really stand out to me as time has gone on. I will say I do at least kind of admire the Secret Life of Walter Mitty and what he was trying to go for. I just don't know if it's all that successful. But I'd say overall, Ben Stiller is not one of my favorites. If anything, I think the best thing he has ever done as of late is his directing and even co-creation of the show Severance.
Okay. Yeah. Which I haven't seen, admittedly. So
it's good. Really good.
Yeah. As a filmmaker, this one, like, he's real easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's Tropic Thunder, which I think is a comedic masterpiece. I think it's great. And I'm with you on Walter Mitty. I don't think it all works, but I really appreciate the swing. I love the swing.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy that movie, even if it does falter a little bit.
Yeah.
It walters a little bit.
It walters. Oh, nice word.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Clear evidence that JD is a dad.
I couldn't help myself. It was right there. And I had to take it. Low-hanging fruit, had to take it.
No comment. Nice work. I laughed, so good job.
Thank you. His other work outside of that, just not for me. Just not
that's
for me.
fair.
But I haven't seen Severance yet. Haven't seen that.
It's effective. It's good.
I know we're kind of running low on time here. I don't know if there's anyone else or any other film that you want to mention here. I guess I'll briefly mention Kenneth Branagh. I really like his work. And again, doesn't have the cultural impact as some of these others, or none of them really stand out as being the best movies of any given year. But I enjoy them. I do really enjoy them.
Yeah. You mentioned Kenneth Branagh, and one of his most famous films is Hamlet, his adaptation of Hamlet. But he wasn't the only actor in Hollywood to star and direct in a version of Hamlet. That was also Sir Laurence Olivier in 1948 doing his own version of Hamlet. So that's another one we can count for this conversation as well. I'd say the last example I'll cite here before we close out this conversation is it's not even a particular film or even particular films, but the franchise Star Trek. Many of those films were directed by Leonard Nimoy. So I know he has directed Star Trek 3 and 4, and I actually really like 4. I think 4 is quite fun. Star Trek 5, I think it's called The Final Frontier. That was directed by William Shatner. It's sort of notorious for being one of the worst ones, but it is a weird movie, a very weird movie. That's another example there. And if you look at the next generation of Star Trek, movies like First Contact, for instance, they were directed by Jonathan Frakes, who was also in those movies. So, there's another example there too. I at least wanted to cite Star Trek because that's a franchise I kind of grew up with. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for
I know
it.
You like that.
I like most. I don't like all the
franchise in those
films.
movies.
If anything, I'm not much of a Trekkie. In fact, I'm not even that close to the material that I don't even know the correct term for it. I didn't really watch the television. I didn't really watch the television shows. I was more of I watched the movies. That was the extent of my interest in Star Trek.
My introduction, and I know purists are going to absolutely despise me for this, but my introduction was the J.J. Abrams films.
For many people, it was. For many people, it was.
I just did not grow up with those movies at all, and those new ones came out at a time when I was, really coming into my own as a cinephile, because it was like right off the heels of college for me.
Yeah, so many people were being introduced to Star Trek for the first time because of that rebooted that rebooted portion of the series. Yeah, absolutely.
So, at any rate, I think we can wind down the conversation from there.
I think so. A lot of great directors / actors out there doing, and this is we can even extend this out further and talk about actors who became directors but maybe didn't star in their own movies. That's another separate portion of this too that we can certainly talk about.
Yeah, we can certainly get into that at another time. Real fast though, before we go, and I know I'm throwing this at you unexpectedly, but if you had to, if you had to off the cuff here choose, let's say, a top 3 movies of the ones we talked about tonight of this list, would you have a top 3?
not going by our usual rules of criteria by limiting movies that are part of our all-time favorites. Just like off the cuff, any movie that qualifies for this topic.
Yeah, sure.
All right. All right. Well, my number one is City Lights. I can tell you that right now. Number two, probably Unforgiven. Number three, maybe Do the Right Thing. Although, I mean, I hate to say I have two Clint Eastwood movies that qualify because I do really love
Yeah.
Million Dollar Baby. I feel like that third spot would probably be a fight between Do the Right Thing and Million Dollar Baby just at this point.
Okay. Yeah. So my first two are easy. It's Kane and it's Modern Times.
Okay.
After that, I would probably say Do the Right Thing and then Unforgiven as like a fourth.
Okay.
But those can be interchangeable there.
Well, what about Singing in the Rain?
And Singing in the Rain would probably round out my five.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. That would probably be my five.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at if I had to do a top five of movies.
All right.
Just movies based off this.
All right.
Great,
Yeah. All right.
this
So yeah.
topic.
So we definitely would have some crossover in that regard because if I were to extend it out to a top five, I would probably also throw in Chaplin's Modern Times. So I'd probably include both Modern Times and City Lights in
Okay.
that ranking.
Okay. Yeah. City Lights is very much in that conversation as well. And honestly, probably The Kid because I just love Chaplin that much.
It's five Chaplin films.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yeah, I mean, because honestly, okay, so I have Modern Times at one, but I would certainly take City Lights and The Kid over, let's say, any Affleck, Costner, Stallone, Cooper, Stiller.
Yeah.
Maybe like I love Easy Rider, but probably over that as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, Zach Braff, Woody Allen, like any of these other filmmakers. You know, we didn't really talk about Mel Brooks. We could have brought up Mel Brooks in this conversation as well, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I just those are just high-end movies.
I feel like
comparatively to a lot of these others we talked about.
We went into this conversation with it being a particular topic about movies directed by its star, right? And it
Yeah.
really turned into a conversation about Charlie Chaplin, Clint Eastwood, and Orson Welles, right?
Yeah, that's and I know some people would probably throw in Buster Keaton there, and
Yeah.
that's fair. I understand.
I agree.
There
I
are
agree.
massive Keaton fans. I just prefer Chaplin for the reasons I mentioned earlier. But you are right. Like that's the heavy hitters there.
Yeah. Yeah.
No doubt about it. And again, I would throw in Gene Kelly for Singing in the Rain in that
Yeah.
top tier.
Yeah, for sure.
But outside of that, yeah, it's, Easy Rider as a film, as a singular film, is probably close to that top tier.
It'd be a
If
top
it-
10
if
one,
it is,
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do love that movie quite a bit.
for sure. But yeah, a lot of these others are varying degrees of good, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
an interesting, and I'm really curious where Monkey Man kind of falls into all of this.
Oh, I'm so
So,
looking forward to that one.
I can't
Been
wait.
hearing good things. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. I think with that, we'll go ahead and wind down the conversation. Really appreciate everyone tuning in this week. If you want to help out the show, there are a couple of ways you can do that. You can sign up on Patreon at patreon.com/InSessionFilm. You can join our YouTube membership on our YouTube page,
Yeah.
or you can join Apple Podcast subscriptions and you'll get our VIP bonus content. So that's a really great way to help support the show. And do urge everyone to do that. It's a low monthly fee and you get access to all of our bonus content. Of course, over on Patreon, there are other rewards available as well. Make sure you stay tuned for our reviews this week, as we'll have a review for Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire, as we know.
Okay, now you're
new-
finally getting the title down, right? You're trying to
I
remember
think
that
so.
one.
I'm trying
Okay.
to. We'll see when it comes time to do the review if I can remember it or not. But yes,
I don't think it matters. I don't
the
think it matters.
New Empire. Whatever. Yeah, I don't even know what that means. I've seen the film and I still don't know what that means. Anyway.
That's actually hilarious. Now I can't wait to see the movie.
But we'll have a review for Roadhouse as well.
Mhm.
So you can be on the lookout for that. and we mentioned it earlier. We do have new reviews out for Immaculate and Ghostbusters: The Frozen Empire. If you've missed those reviews, they're available right now on your feed, so you can go and check that out. There's a brand new Women in Session episode where they talked about Emma Stone, which was really fun. Great episode. Definitely urge people to go and check that out. It appears that I unintentionally stirred up a hornet's nest with the Women in Session group because,
of course, you did.
You and we talked about Brad Pitt last week, and look, I was just simply defending this late era of Brad Pitt. That's it. That's all I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to be antagonistic or anything, but I guess they disagreed with what I had to say about Brad Pitt.
They can.
They can. So I don't know if it's going to happen because we have to work out scheduling, but I might end up joining an episode of Women in Session to debate this era of Brad Pitt.
Wow.
So
good
be on
for
the
you.
lookout for that.
Good
Hopefully
luck.
it comes together. It should be a lot of fun. We'll see if we can make that work.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, go and check out this last week's Women in Session. It was a really great show. And I think with that, that's about it, right? Just follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd.
Yeah, we
We're
appreciate
active
it.
on all those places there. If you're on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that fun stuff.
Give
If
us
you're
some
listening on
comments
Apple
there.
Podcasts, absolutely.
We appreciate the conversation there as well.
Absolutely. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, rate and review us on those platforms. Really helps out the show and people finding it. And I believe that is it. Do you have any final thoughts on anything before we get out of here?
Well, once again, happy Easter to everyone that chooses to celebrate. Hopefully you had a good time doing so with family and friends. And if you chose to watch movies during the Easter holiday, hopefully you weren't like me and watched that movie Hop.
Gosh, I did not see Hop. No, I missed Hop.
I think you can still keep that one as a miss for you. I'll just simply say that.
Fair enough. I will not be hopping on the Hop train.
I'll say this. I get why kids like it. Wasn't
fair enough. Look, some animated films are made for adults and children, and sometimes it's just made for the children. That's perfectly
such as
fine.
Illumination movies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As far as a final thought, I meant to bring this up at the top of the show, and then we got down a rabbit hole I just did not anticipate. So I apologize. But I do want to throw out some sincere thoughts on the late, great Louis Gossett Jr.
Yes,
who recently passed away.
Good call.
This last week at the age of 87, I believe it was. He, of course, was the first black actor to win Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars for An Officer and a Gentleman.
Yeah.
But, a lot of people might remember him, at least if you're our age, you might have seen him in the Iron Eagle movies, for example. That's where I was probably familiar with him the most growing up. Before catching up with An Officer and a Gentleman, much later I think I was in college when I saw that film for the first time.
Yeah.
So, he's been in a lot of great stuff. Emmy nominated for Roots, I believe. And that is also something that, a lot of us watched when we were kids. You watched that in school. So.
Oh, yeah. Great show. Great series.
Yeah, absolutely. Great series. And obviously he was a big part of that. So
for sure.
And he's been in a lot of stuff. I know he was recently nominated for an Emmy for Watchmen, which I did not see, but there was that. He had a brief role in The Color Purple this last year. So
yeah,
he might have been 87, but he was not slowing down. He was still working.
Not slowing down at all.
The time.
Busy man. You got to appreciate that.
And still bringing the goods, still bringing it, even at age 87. So, a legend. Absolutely will be missed for sure, but love his work. So I at least wanted to bring some attention to Louis Gossett Jr.
Yeah, I'll echo that.
R.I.P. Good sir.
Absolutely.
All right. With all of that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time on the InSession Film Podcast. Citizen Kane. Best movie
Charlie
of all time.
Chaplin.
Chaplin.
Eastwood.
Love a good Chaplin.
Oh.